This episode is brought to you by Henry the Adjuster. Honesty when you need it the most.
All right, so folks, we are back. And again, our show is meant to be informational. So today we're going to try and answer a lot of questions about voting, voter information, things about elected officials, and the best person to answer those types of questions are supervisors of election. And today we have Wendy Link, supervisor of elections in West Palm Beach, Florida. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Palm Beach County. My apologies.
Palm Beach County.
There you go. So thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So I had the distinct pleasure of giving Wendy an award at the Hispanic vote a few weeks ago, and also touring the facility, which I'm in manufacturing and warehouse, right? As a manufacturer, and the way you have that warehouse set up is just amazing. I mean, it's probably the best place I've ever seen when it comes to elections.
Well, thank you. Well, we appreciate that. We try really hard to make it make sense to people.
Right.
One of the things when I got here and first became part of the office and would talk to people about concerns they've had, what they would want to see different, what would make things work. And one of the things that I learned was because even though the office understood how things were going from point A to point B, and there was a plan in place, before I got here, because it wasn't clear to the observers, it appeared to observers that there was no rhyme or reason, that it was complete chaos, and there wasn't the confidence that there needed to be, and maybe the full transparency only in that while they could see everything, they didn't understand what was being done. So that was one of the changes that we tried to make, was so that it really did delineate, this is what we're doing here. There's a little bit of a progression toward it. It makes sense. Things are going to go from this point to this point to this point on to this point, and in a way that people can see it well.
Yeah, the flow of the place was great. I mean, it just flows right around the whole thing to the end where they're being tallied. So It was really, really impressive to see. So a lot of people don't know what a supervisor election does. So can you explain the role?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. So we're very lucky. It's a nonpartisan office in that we run, our job is to just run the election. We're not running it for one party or the other party. So our office administers all federal, state, and local elections that are occurring in Palm Beach County. For the local elections, we really contract with the municipalities, because for federal and state elections, I am the supervisor of elections. For municipal elections, the clerk is the supervisor, the clerk of that city, and they contract with us to assist them in various roles. And some of them we do more than others based on what they want. So we're looking at all things related to running an election. And then we're also going to be registering the voters, making sure that we're doing education and outreach to voters. We're in charge of maintaining the accurate voter rolls, making sure that those are kept up to where they need to be, qualifying candidates, dealing with candidate filings. For those of you who have run, you've worked with our office with that. We do the logic and accuracy test on all of our equipment before the election. And then, of course, after we run the election, we do the post-election audit to show that, what's being done and that all of that was done accurately. If there's a recount, we run the recounts. In a municipal election, if there's got to be a runoff, we'll handle those runoffs. So we really touch so many different ways. Education and outreach is a very important part of that. So we're real excited to do this with you.
Awesome. I have a couple of questions. So I know that there are a lot of concerns around machine counting and also updating voter rolls. Can you go into it a little bit more, just to instill some confidence in people about how, a supervisor of elections? Now, the other question, a side note, is, are all supervisor elections operating under the same protocol, or does it depend on the supervisor of elections?
Well, we are a ministerial office, by and large. So the Florida statutes really govern everything that we do. Within that, there might be some, each supervisor is charged with obviously following the laws, but making the policies and procedures within the office to be ones that work for your situation. An office the size of ours, a county our size, is obviously going to do things a little bit differently than Lafayette County that has 4,000 voters, right? So we are all following the same laws, but how we accomplish that is going to vary from supervisor to supervisor.
Okay. And how often do you update your voter rolls?
We are, to some degree, they're daily in that, when we receive something from the DHSMV, we'll get a transmission from them for everybody who's registered or done an update with them. And that's going to occur daily. So you're going to have updates there. If the Secretary of State's office through the Division of Elections, if there's been deaths or felony convictions, or somebody's been adjudicated mentally incapacitated, then we're going to get that information, and that can occur daily. But your big list maintenance that I think people talk about, the major things where we're working with a post office and doing that, we do that quarterly in our office. It's required. Used to be you had to do it every 2 years. Now by law, you have to do it every year. And we do it quarterly because it just keeps it, again, at any given time, it's going to be a little bit more accurate. And then you don't have major changes once a year because you're doing it as you go along. And it just keeps it going. The one caveat to that is you cannot, by law, you cannot do the list maintenance procedures within 90 days of an election. And so when we had, for example, last year, special elections, we had so many special elections, there really wasn't much of a time where we weren't within 90 days of a special election. So we have these policies and procedures, but we also have to balance those with what the law actually says, which is you can't do it within 90 days of an election.
Wow. So 90 days within an election doesn't just mean that, like, let's say it's a particular municipal that is, it's all of the whole entire.
It's actually within a federal or state election.
I see.
Within a municipal election, we can. So we have actually very recently just done list maintenance in Palm Beach County.
Wow. Okay. Great. And the machine question, what do you think about
the machine counting? Well, it's really not, you'll see all counties are doing it throughout the state because it is a law. So we are required to use the machines. They all go through a very, very rigorous certification process at the state level. So we are only allowed to use those machines for tabulation that have been approved and certified by the Secretary of State's office. And
how often does that certification happen?
It has to occur before they can be brought in initially. Mm-hmm. And then anytime they make a change, if they do an update, if they have a new version, if there's been any change to their process, it has to go through that recertification again. So we are only permitted to use what the Secretary of State's office through the Division of Elections has certified. So for the machines in Florida, they currently come from two companies. But there are, I understand, often there are other companies that would like to be in this process. And I believe that there are some, I don't know the actual names of them, but I believe there is at least one that is looking to perhaps reach its certification in Florida.
I see. Okay. Great. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, so that's very thorough.
I think if I'm speaking right, Palm Beach County has the best election process, right? The cleanest when you look at it on the charts.
Say that, sure.
I think I've seen it on the charts where you're running the best operation in Florida right now. It's fantastic.
I'll never throw another office under the bus, but sure, we're pretty proud of what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm not throwing them under the bus. I'm just saying I think I've seen that you're the best.
Yeah.
So,
would you say that has to do with like your previous experience and working in the private sector, and like, are you bringing any of that, into?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Uh-huh. There's a lot of just processes and procedures that I learned, previous life that were important to the smooth operation of an organization, whether you're dealing with lawyers, whether you're, whoever you're dealing with, and for consistency, again, for transparency, so that everybody knows this is how we're doing it. And so I think, one of the things we've done is really taken a hard look at all of our policies and our procedures when it came in, and what could be better and how can we be more transparent. We came up, as an office, there are 3 things that we are going to be governed by in everything we do. We call them the big 3. If you ask anybody in our office, they should be able to give them to you. And that is integrity, speaks for itself, accountability, that, basically there's no excuses. We're accountable. We're accountable to the voters. We're accountable to the state. We're accountable to the candidates. We're accountable to each other. We're accountable to everybody in this election process to get it right. It's our job to do it right. And so we're going to, hold ourselves accountable for doing that. And then the last is service. And that is to remember that we are in a service organization. We are here to serve all those same people I just mentioned. Our voters, of course, but also with that comes, the political parties, the candidates, all the different groups that are going to touch the elections office.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's you'd have to see the operation, Lynn and Mo. It's beautiful in that warehouse.
You should have videotaped it so we could share it on the show.
I didn't know if I was allowed
We'll do a
to. I don't know if
documentary
that's allowed or not.
We actually have these, we do these tours, but we do have little on our website. We broke those down, I think, into 9 little snippets of 3 minutes or less, where we kind of do give a little highlight of each of the different parts of our warehouse. So you can take a look at those.
Okay, great. Maybe we can put that in, while she's talking and edit that in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I had a question because you kind of answered it in part with, referencing the list maintenance. So, again, people, when you think of supervisor for elections, they think you work during election seasons only. So it's like, okay, what does that office do beyond, the election season? So you answered one question, list maintenance. So what are some other things that take place throughout the year?
It's funny. I'll be able to tell you shortly because it'll be the first time I've ever been in that position. Because when I came in 2019, we took advantage. Of course, we had our municipal elections. And then after that, we started with our policies and procedures and then looking at, did we have the best equipment? Did we have the best registration system? We made the decision that we did not. And so for 2019, that year was really spent on we're going to upgrade our voting equipment. And with that comes a whole new way of doing things and a lot of education and a lot of how are you going to build your ballots from that? Because that's something we're charged with doing. And so we had to change all of our equipment out. We upgrade all of our computers because our computers were very old. The software that we were using was old versions that we didn't have all the security that, is ideal. We also we looked at our voter registration. Were we in the most secure voter registration system, the one that could really do what we needed to do? We made the determination that we were not. So that's really changing everything, the way we do absolutely everything in our office by changing that system. So that was 2019. 2020, you know what that was? Feel a little bit of COVID, a little bit of a presidential election, throw that in, that kept us pretty busy. 2021, we thought we were going to really get into things, and then we had so many special elections, so we were in election mode even in our off year, and now we're getting into then we had 2022, and now we're just getting ready to start. But a lot of what we do is we do a lot of training. We have initiative petitions. Petitions take up a lot of time. Okay, there's as these petitions come through, especially if they're legitimate petitions, then we can get through them pretty quickly. If they are not, if they're fraudulent petitions, which we had an inordinate amount of in 2020, they take up a lot of time because you don't want to just assume that this is an invalid petition. So we actually have a process where we look at it 7 different ways. So we will, before we say this petition is no good, we will go through 7 different processes to see if that petition is valid or not. So for an invalid petition, it basically takes 7 times the amount of time that a valid one will take. And so we have and we have a short turnaround time to get those out once they come into our office. So we're doing a lot of petitions during these times. Like I said, a lot of training, a lot of looking at our policies and procedures. What can we improve? It's when we do a lot of our voter outreach. So we're not even through February. We've already had over 400 hours of voter outreach and education. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we spend a lot of time making sure we're getting out, we're letting people know about changes in the laws, because every time the legislature meets, there's going to be some change. And so we've got to figure out what we need to do to implement that within our office, build it into our procedures, and then do our best to educate the public so that they're aware of those changes and how they will affect them.
Can you share some of those changes, like the recent ones? Maybe just a real highlight. Like
sure, yeah. Sort of at the high level, a couple of big things were so vote by mail is one example. So vote by mail, to request a vote by mail ballot in Florida, we've always been a state that you had to request your ballot. We never just mail them to you in Florida. But now to request your ballot, you have to provide for us your social, last four of your social, or your Florida driver's license or Florida ID. And just providing that isn't enough. It has to be the one that matches what we have on file. So we're checking that. So that's a big change in how we're collecting those. The other is that it used to be that they were good for 2 general election cycles. Now they're only good for 1 general election cycle. So this is the first time in probably since they started that after the November election, we had 0 vote by mail requests on file. And so we went from 500,000 vote by mail requests in 2020, over 400,000 in 2022, that we had 0 on November 9th. Okay, so one day after the election. Actually, I take that back. We had 0 that were effective, on November 9th because we had no more elections. They're technically good through December 31st, but we didn't have any elections that we were using them for. So making sure that voters know, if this is the way you want to vote, then you're going to have to re-up that, and you have to make sure that you're doing it with all the formalities that are required. Another big one was that you can only turn in up to 2 ballots that do not belong to you or your immediate family members. So again, ballot harvesting was a concern of the legislature. This is how they addressed that. Our drop boxes, as they were called, they changed their name. They're now called secure ballot intake stations. And our secure ballot intake stations have to have attendants that are employees of our office. At any time they're open, they are attended to by members of our staff to have somebody there. The law requires that we have 1. Our practice is to have 2, so that one can, if there's restrooms or breaks or what have you, there's always going to have somebody there. So those are, I'd say, some of the big things that changed. How people, third-party voter registration groups, they have a lot of changes to their laws that we always encourage people to make sure that they're remembering that. We used to have check boxes on our ballot return envelopes that when people return their vote by mail, they could check the box to say, continue my vote by mail. That's not an option any longer. So they can't do that. So again, it's really making sure that the voters know that and understand that, so that they aren't surprised or disappointed that it doesn't work the way it used to.
So I have 2 questions on that.
Sure.
One, when we were in the office, you had mentioned that if somebody requests a vote by mail and then they lose it, they can request another one.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if somebody does the vote by mail and then another of the same person's ballot does come in on election day or something, there's a way that you can figure out which one
Right. Mm-hmm.
used and not both of them, so that people, because I know these are concerns on people's minds, like,
Sure.
how many ballots were turned in or.
Right. So you can, if a voter misplaces theirs, they can request us to send them another, but nobody needs to worry that means there's 2 or even 3 out there, because we will only take the first one that comes back, right? And it's also, if they've moved and they've gone to another precinct, again, we're only going to take the one that matches their precinct now, right? Because
Yeah.
if you've moved, you have a different ballot. We need to make sure you're voting the correct ballot style. And so, yes, they all have barcodes, not on the ballot, because the ballot is a secret ballot, but the barcode is on the outside envelope, and we run that barcode through. As soon as that barcode goes through, then you have voter history inside our office. Same thing if you're going to early voting or if you're going on election day. As soon as we check you in, you have voter history. So once you have voter history, and we update that constantly throughout the day. So once that occurs, then whether you show up to vote and we already got your vote by mail, then you're going to be told, sorry, you already voted by mail, or you're not able to vote here, or vice versa. You went in person to vote because you were watching and it didn't look like your vote by mail had been turned in yet. Maybe it was lost in the mail, what have you. You go vote in person. Then we get your vote by mail back. It will be spit out and it'll be set aside as not being counted because you already had voter history because you voted either early voting or on election day. So a lot of things can be out there, but we're only taking it once. You only get one crack.
And there was one other machine that was fascinating to me, and it was in the corner area by when you first walk in that caged area. It's right by on the other side when you first walk in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have the machines that are Italian, maybe.
The tabulators? So when you first walk in off to the right, we have all of our tabulation machines. Walk in to the
it's like
left.
right behind where you would walk in.
Trying to think. So when
Like
you
the
walk
lobby area, and then right behind the lobby area. So there's like this.
Okay, probably on the vote by mail side, I think you're talking about. So that would be right. So yeah, that's a very fast machine. That's a lot of fun. So that's our sorter. We have inserters and sorters. And so, yeah, and those are things that are fun to show people when you come, because if you do request your vote by mail and we now go through the process, we're able to show folks how we know that we had everything in your envelope when we sent it to you and that we only had what's supposed to be in there, because we both check the measurement, how thick it is. We also check the weight of each one. And if it's off from what it's supposed to be, it'll get spit out. Then we also do manual random checks. So that's one. And then over on this other side, the sorter, it's amazing to people. It's amazing to me every time I see it, because we actually take a photograph of every ballot as it goes out, the ballot envelope, and then also the ballot envelope when it comes back in. So it's spinning through, it's getting sorted into whatever grouping we've told the machine to sort it into, but it's taking photographs as it goes
that machine
through.
was awesome, because that stuff flying through there. I mean, that camera's got to be so quick. It's like crazy.
So we're able then to say, yes, this is the ballot we sent you. Here's a picture of it, as it's leaving to go to the post office.
Yeah.
Which really company is that sorter from?
That is Blue Crest.
Okay. Oh, so all the machines are actually different, right? Different machines.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Right. And Blue Crest is not something that every company has. I think actually that's what a lot of the mail houses use, because it does. And one of the things that we've used it for, and that we were able to sell it to the county commission on why they should fund it for us, is we had done the math, and because we can sort it and sort of do some of the job for the post office by sorting in zip code or zip +4, then we save the money on postage. And so we had predicted that within 2.5 years, we would have had the machine pay for itself. They tend to have about a 10-year lifespan. And instead, we paid for that machine in just 1.5 years.
Wow. Oh, by the way, this episode is not sponsored by Blue Crest.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, but it's just the sorting in that
just
process.
To make sure.
Right, yeah, no. It was just.
That's a small shout out to Blue Crest. That's
no, there's none of that.
Not for that. There are others.
I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, but shout out anyway. So
yeah. No, it's just we made the decision internally that we could do this, that even if you figure in the staff time that we're going to use, the materials, and what's happening, it gives us much more control than sending it out to a third party. And it also, like I said, we're able to save so much money. We're able to do it quickly. And we're able to know that it's always within the security confines that we have and not, being outsourced. And that's not to say outsourcing is bad. A lot of counties do that. Mm-hmm. It's just something that we chose to do internally, and we're able to make the financial case for why that made sense.
Well, it's because you're from the private sector. You're used to doing real business, so you analyze things a lot different than people that have been in office their whole life.
Right. Maybe
You have a more
so.
critical thinking
So-
mind, which is great.
I want to ask you what you think about, like, you know, how people say, like, we should go back to 1-day voting and using paper ballots.
Well, we do use paper ballots. I'm all for that.
Meaning like a hand count, like, you know, like,
Well, a hand count for one will take, you know, what's the patience level of the voter, you know, and the candidate.
Right.
Because a county our size, paper counting will take a long time. Also, I mean, we've shown over and over again, not just us, but, you know, many studies, hand counting is not as accurate as machine counting. And you can check the machines before, during, after, you know, and you can do these audits. We actually do when we're able to. You know, the law requires us to do, if we're doing a machine audit, we have to do 20%. If we're doing a hand audit, it's 1%. We actually, when we are able to use the machine audit, which we're fortunate in our county, again, we made the case to the county commission for why it would be wise to spend the money on a separate audit function. And part of that is now you have another completely different set of machines. It's a different technology. And actually in other states, they are a competitor to our tabulation company because they are a tabulation machine. You know, they are a tabulation company in other states, but not in Florida currently, at least. And so I now have, as I'm running these things through, they're running through my tabulation machine. Then I'm running it through an audit machine, and it's occurring all at the same time. So I'm able to know in real time, have I caught every ballot? Is there a chance I've missed a ballot either way? Because I'm checking it. And then at the end, using two completely different types of technology, I'm getting the results back and telling me how they, you know, how that came out. And so that audit is with a different company, and it's always coming back, sometimes an exact, other times it'll come back within 2, 3, 4, 5 votes. And we're able to go to that ballot and say, this is the ballot that our tabulation machine read as this, and our audit machine read as that. And then the canvassing board, if it came down to it and it was going to make a difference in the outcome of the race, then the canvassing board, with their own eyes, you know, in a public setting, can say, you know, either this one was accurate or more accurate, or this one, because, and usually it's a stray mark. I'll tell you what it is. Usually if they read it differently, it's because there was a stray mark or a mark of some sort. And so one machine said that's an overvote, so that didn't count. And the other says, no, that was a stray mark. It wasn't enough of a fill-in of the oval, so we didn't count that, and we counted the vote. So, and we're always within just a few, never has it been enough to change the outcome of a race. And I can do that with 100%. I could before, while we were under the old version. Now, as I mentioned to you, there's a lot of certification that goes in. Mm-hmm. And so that company submitted a new version, and that's still going through state certification. So until they've completed that state certification, we're not able to use their new version yet.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, to us, you know, the speed, the more people handle a ballot, the more opportunity there is for it to be misplaced, to be lost, to be torn, to be damaged. You're better off. You're checking your systems, checking your machines, making sure that they're accurate.
Yeah.
In terms of the same day that you asked me about, it's really a matter of, how long are the lines going to be? And, we have a lot of people who say they like the either in-person early voting or the vote by mail, because then they know if they're going to be, if they were sick that day, or maybe they fully planned, and this happened to me myself. I know when I was a lawyer, had fully intended to vote on my way home, and client emergency came up. And because I didn't work in the same area that I, live in, so I couldn't just run down the street and vote, I didn't make it back to vote on election day because I was an election day voter. And so I ended up, my vote didn't count for that election. And that's not good. And
No.
people, so having these other opportunities where if you're someone who says, I don't happen to like vote by mail, I don't want to do that. Okay, great. You can early vote. You're going to vote in person. And you're going to have the same experience, or have the opportunity to have the same experience, maybe even a better one, in early voting than you would on election day. Or if you are somebody who prefers the convenience of vote by mail, you have that option as well. I just think it gives more people a chance to vote.
Yeah.
Have you seen voter turnout rise or fall since you've been in office?
It really depends on the election. So it was really high for 2020. Then in our special elections, unfortunately, they don't have the excitement, they don't have things, and so those were not as high. In fact, pretty low. Municipal elections tend to be somewhat low. Our primaries, we would love to have a higher turnout during our primary elections. Midterms aren't as high as presidential, or at least for us, but certainly higher than your specials and your municipals. So I'd say it's.
And if you compared like the numbers prior to you being in office, like, do you see a rise or fall?
I think it's a rise. Yeah, I have to tell you, I don't want to. I would need to go back and double check those one to one to give you a fully accurate answer. But I think in general, we're seeing it rise.
No, I agree. Definitely 2020 was so contentious. It was going to be huge. So that would be a very different kind of
2024 is going to be busy too.
I know, right? I think so too. Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill, you were going to say?
No, I just, I'm obviously I'm a fan of Palm Beach because I won there. Right. So but I think, DeSantis, he appointed you in 2019, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think in a big picture, they should put junior supervisors in these places and let you go around and fix all of these warehouses that are running our elections, because you did an amazing job, because you're bringing the private sector mentality into this government area and you're cleaning it up, and it shows. And I think you're doing an amazing job. So how would people that want to register to vote, that don't know what to do, what would they do?
So a couple of easy things. They can call our office. How tech savvy are they? So they can certainly go online. They go to our website, votepalmbeach.gov. And one of the things that we really try to stress to people is we went to .gov as a security measure, because while people may not remember, is it PBC elections? Is it Palm Beach elections? You don't want to have somebody spoofing and pretending they're, somebody else. But if you remember .gov, you're going to get it right. So votepalmbeach.gov, because we are the only .gov in our county. If you're tech savvy, you can go online, register, you're going to be great. Otherwise, you can call our office. We will mail you a voter registration form with a self-addressed stamped envelope that you can mail back to us. Certainly, we are out all the time, as I mentioned, at festivals, at shows, where we have our staff out there to register people. There are third-party voter registration groups that are out registering people. So lots of different ways. But if you call us or go online, we'll make sure, at the very least, we'll get something to you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent job explaining it, because I think the election process is hard for people to understand, because they just think they go circle a little a little bubble, and they turn it in, and then they listen to the news, and the news says everything is fakes and everything is crazy, and they don't know if their votes count.
Right.
But listening to you speak about how it does count, and how when there's discrepancies, you're able to work through it, makes a big difference to voters, because we need the confidence so people keep registering and voting.
Well, we also need them when you talk about filling the ovals. Filling in the ovals, you would think, is really easy. You'd be surprised how many voters don't do that well. So, and one of the things I tell people is really nobody, and our office operates in the, transparently in the public, utmost integrity. Even with that, you don't want us trying to determine what was your intent on voting, right? So we want you to vote in a way that there's no question. Don't put big check marks through them where the check mark goes through two different ovals. Really carefully color in that oval. So let us know, because It
Color in between
shouldn't
the
be
lines.
hard, but there's a lot of things where that becomes in a recount, is that oval halfway filled in, more than halfway, should it count, should it not? So really focus on being a good voter, be prepared, make sure you've got your ID ready when you're going to the polls. We also want voters to take some voter responsibility, right? Do your part to make sure that we're servicing you properly and that we can serve you the way we want. And so that's really important. And then it allows us to do things, like we've done where we've, added an appointment system. First people in the country to do, if you want to make an appointment to early vote, you can. You don't have
I like
to.
that.
Yeah, you can go the way you've always gone. That's still available to you. But if you think you might be on a tight time frame and you just don't have 2 hours to wait, but you want to vote in person and you want to do it early, well, now you can make an appointment. And so, we are asking, what do we do during those off times? Part of it is we're looking for how can we better serve the voters? What improvements can we make? And that appointment voting is one of our more recent ones.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Again,
Tracking your
practice after
ballot is
thinking.
another. There's now a couple of different ways. If you're voting by mail, how can you track your ballot? We can do it on our website, but you can also sign up for a free service that you don't even have to check your website now. We will reach out to you and tell you the information.
Wow.
So, and that's called Ballot Tracks. So, we're looking at what are ways that we can do things that are going to make it better for the voter, giving them more information so that they're going to have more confidence in their vote.
So when you say the ballot track, if once it comes in and it gets counted, do they get a little message saying your vote has been counted?
They do.
Cool.
It'll tell you when we send it to you. It'll tell you we've received it back, and it'll tell you when it was counted.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, on behalf of everybody on the show, I want to thank you again for coming on, sharing this information. I think that our audience would find this, very informative, and hopefully it encourages everyone to check in with their own county-wide supervisor for elections and get more information toward the facilities like Bill obviously has, and find it as fascinating as he obviously did. So, so no, thank you again for coming on. So anybody else, any final words?
No, I just want to thank you for being a stand for voters and letting them know that their votes count, because that's so important these days.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for everything you all are doing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Likewise. And lock us all in for that tour too.
And, we do them. We will be doing more. We put them out. We have some that are open to the public. Again, trying to give everybody as much confidence and information as we can. So yeah, check our website. We'll make sure we reach out to you, let you know next time we're doing one.
Do you have a supervisor of election tour for the other counties?
Yeah, they got theirs down pat. We actually, you'd be surprised. We all work really well together. 6 7 of us get together in conference and we share best ideas. So it's a good group. It's a really good group.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank
And
you.
to the
Joe.
rest, and to our
Okay.
audience, till the next time when we have some more information for you, please make sure if you are liking the content to go ahead and click the subscribe button and hit the like button as well. So until next time, America, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.